You can take my Lambo. I'll put on a tight show. You sure you can handle? We be faster than Django.
So salty, I still think about it.
We can take my Lambo. I'll put on a tight show. You sure you can handle? We be faster than Django.
Can't stop, won't stop. I can't stop, won't stop. I can't stop, won't stop. Can't stop.
Can't stop, won't stop. Can't stop, won't stop. Stop, won't stop. Can't stop.
What's up, Startup Hustle listeners? This is Andrew, your host for today's episode, founder Marknology, here with Kevin March. We're going to have some fun today talking about Bitcoin, talking about the company Floating Point Group and kind of what that is. We were talking a little bit about that before the show. I'm trying to get a good wrap under what that is. We're going to have some fun digging into that and hopefully, be able to provide some insight to anyone interested in the Bitcoin or digital currency area. I refer to it as Bitcoin because that's how I know of it, but we're going to dig into some of what the other currencies are. Before we get started, shout out to our sponsor, Gusto. As a small business owner, paying and taking care of your team can be tough, especially now. So that's why Gusto built easy to use payroll, benefits, onboarding, HR tools. Our listeners on the Startup Hustle get 3 months for free at gusto.com/startup hustle. That's gusto.com/startup hustle. I've used Gusto for probably about a year now. I made the switch in 2019. Share a little bit more with you in that as we go on the show. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm really interested in. I get an hour to just pick your brain, and I think we're gonna have some fun. But let's start a little bit before we get right into the details. Let's start a little bit about yourself. Tell us to our listeners, and how did we get here? Where you're working with this group?
Ooh, all right. So I'll go all the way back. Born and raised in Springfield, Missouri. Farm country, USA.
Okay, I know what that is.
Yeah. I live in New York now, but it's I'm always proud to represent Missouri. We gave the world a bunch of great things. Harry Truman, Brad Pitt, Budweiser. So I've no shame. Being in New York and on Wall Street and telling people where I'm from. Where I'm at now, I helped found Floating Point Group my senior year of undergrad, and I actually dropped out to pursue the opportunity. I was at UMKC. University of Missouri, Kansas City. I was studying biomedical technology. And I've always been really interested in biomedical technology. I've always been really interested in research. But I was a little bit jaded on the space. I'm really convinced that all the work that biomedical researchers do is pretty labor intensive and going to be automated by computer scientists. So I really didn't want to go down that path. I didn't want to put myself into a place where I know in 5 years all of the lab work that I'm doing is going to be replaced by someone who can code and smarter than me. But anyway, my senior year, a couple of my friends from up in Cambridge, Massachusetts, where I was researching at the time, they were like, "Hey man, let's get into this Bitcoin thing." I played around the equity markets. My co-founder John had played around the equity markets. He considered himself a part-time quantitative trader. So we got in and we started trading Bitcoin. And that's like that was like the premise that really got us to today. We founded Floating Point Group to solve problems that we had when we're trading Bitcoin for ourselves.
That's the same thing as Marknology. I actually started in the networking and security space, hated working at a knock, which we might talk about a little bit later because of the similarities. But I was like, I don't want to just wait on problems to happen. I want to be proactive about solving them and creating things. And so that's why I really had to switch. Keep going.
Yeah, I mean, so I think
I guess I want to
Yeah.
know. I'll get a little bit more specific
Sure,
about
yeah.
keep going. So I want to know. I think we need to break this down to like low level, just because I know of a lot of people don't understand this, and they're not going to listen if we don't talk to them in a way that really makes sense. I have this issue all the time talking about Amazon and just like, really trying to, as I've been working in that space and breaking down those problems. That's why I created Marknology. When you say we started trading Bitcoin, what does that mean?
Ooh. So all around the world, there exist these exchanges that are all trying to be the next Nasdaq. They're trying to be like the next NYSE or whatever it is. They're interesting places to play around on. You can go there. You can load in your debit card, your crypto, your credit card, and you can send them US dollars, and you can buy Bitcoin. And then you look and you see that I bought Bitcoin, and I got a price of like 9,954 or whatever it was. And you see that the price of Bitcoin went up, and then you feel pretty good because you're
What are we at?
9,000.
Like seven? We at like 17,000 right now, or
Yeah,
where are we at?
we're north of 18,000 right now, so that would make you a pretty good trader. At least that's how it would feel. But we started to realize that we'd buy on this one exchange and our price was X. So then we'd look at the other exchange and the price was X minus one or whatever it is. And we realized that in the very early days, it appears that we can buy in one place and sell in another and make some money. And that sounded pretty cool. We were undergraduates. We had to pay for rent. We had to pay for food somehow. We didn't have any money. All of us were researching at the time. We didn't have any time to work and actually produce income, produce any real value for the world. So we started trading Bitcoin. So we started with these really basic strategies where we would take like $5,000 of all the money that we scraped together from ourselves, our friends, etc. And we would go buy Bitcoin on Coinbase, and we would ship it to this other exchange, and we would sell it for like 2% more. And we just do this all day. Where suddenly at the end of the day, we've made like 2% on our $5,000. And that was really cool. Because if you do that enough days, suddenly that becomes a pretty profitable business.
And is there a cost like to move it between exchanges?
Yeah, I mean that's the beautiful thing that that has me excited about Bitcoin. You don't have to wait on the banks. It's not like a wire system. You don't have to worry on like a credit card processor. Bitcoin is a centralized network. So if you want to send your Bitcoin from one place to the other, it might cost a couple of dollars. It might take 30 minutes, but it's 24/7, 365. Doesn't believe in holidays.
Kind of like e-commerce.
Exactly.
I mean,
We're speaking the same language.
Open, right? You don't have to go when the stores open. You just get your money or you get your stuff, and you're ready to go.
Yeah,
like, I have a hard time, honestly, logically making time to go to the store or shop or groceries when I'm like, I just like doing that sometimes out of habit, but I could do it way more efficiently if I just set up an auto order, or did it later, like on my own time. Okay, so this is teaching me a lot, and I'm sure it is for some of the listeners that aren't privy to this space. I'm sure a lot of people know a lot about digital currency, and there's probably a lot that don't. So okay, so you're moving in the early days, you're moving stuff between exchanges, finding better rates, on this marketplace or this marketplace. How'd you go from like trading, 2% on $5,000, to where you've got a business, or at least like maybe I'm jumping a couple too many steps. Where'd you go after those first kinds of learnings where you're getting excited about, hey, if you do this 30 days in a row, you've made some serious money?
I mean, so I couldn't really code at all at the time. I mean, right now I'm still a pretty terrible coder, but at least I can do a little bit more. But both of the guys I was working with, they were much better, technical folks than I am. So we started automating a lot of the stuff that we were doing. Then, it wasn't, we were just doing this a couple times a day when we weren't in class. Then, 24/7, 365, even on holidays, that we had this thing that was just in the background, just doing these trades every time it could, every time the market made sense.
So like a script where you're running like
Exactly.
like
Yeah. We in the very early days, we weren't even doing this on like AWS or something. We weren't doing this through the cloud. We just had a computer that was running, a local version of this. As long as we didn't as long as we didn't close the laptop, it was still running. So that was how.
Sounds super exciting to me. Like we figured out something that, like, how long ago was this?
This was 2 years ago.
Okay, so not that long ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
So you're like, okay, we figured this thing out. You feel like you got a secret. You're like, keep the laptop running. Like, let's buy extra batteries, extra cords, like whatever we got to do,
yeah.
keep this thing running. So you figured out how to run the script from a local computer, which would like go exchange, look at all the different exchanges,
Yeah.
okay, and then compare the rates and be like, should I move it or not? Is that
Yeah.
what it was doing?
That's exactly what I was doing. So it'd be like, okay, this is a pretty cheap price. I'm going to buy. Now I'm going to look at all the other places where I could ship it. It takes 30 minutes. So we have to factor that in a little bit. But, where can I send it in the next 30 minutes where I can sell it for even more than I bought it? And it just did this all day. And, we started feeling pretty smart. And we were like, okay, we've done this with, our own personal money. Maybe we can actually raise some funds behind this. And that's when we thought that we're going to get, pretty professional. So we donned our suits, we strapped on our backpacks nice and tight. We took a bus to New York City when we went and pitched some investors.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean
How did that go?
they thought we were cute. We rolled in, we wore ties, and that was like probably like the biggest mistake. That I think that thing right there kind of showed who they were talking to. But we found some investors who are willing to play around with it. People who they can write at least a little bit of a check where they're like, okay, if you lose this money, it's probably not the biggest thing in the world, but you might make it. So that's cool. They're willing to take that risk, and they were from the background that they could take those risks. And suddenly, we were sitting there as undergraduates in our last year of college, and suddenly we had some money looking in front of us. And we were like, hey, we just kind of accidentally formed this business. Where do we go from here? So then we got really serious. I dropped like half my classes. I said serious, and my computer started talking to me. But I dropped some of my classes. We started spending. We had someone dedicated around the clock to watching it, make sure it started working. And we spent all of our time just building all of this infrastructure, building the technology to make sure we can connect to all of these exchanges quickly, building this technology so that we could see where our Bitcoin was at any given time. And we realized that, we'd spent like 6 months building, we'd just done nothing but build this underlying infrastructure. And that's when it kind of clicked for us that like, that's probably the business. If we're doing this, and I bet everyone else who's ever wanted to trade Bitcoin, if any of them want to get serious about it, I bet they're building this too. And that's when like the light bulb kind of went off for us.
Just to relate it to my own story, I was working at a medium-sized retailer, like 300 employees or so. It was my third year in e-commerce. After I had left the kind of networking world, I went to a startup and then an e-commerce manager. And it was the same situation. And I think, this show is by founders for founders, and there's so many similarities between it. But I was helping the company at the time navigate these challenges on Amazon. And this was like 7-8 years ago. And it was, they had map pricing issues. They had reseller issues. They had salesmen that were selling to brick and mortars that were putting it online. And do you take that away from them because it's challenging this space? And then I worked on a freelance project with Adidas, as they say. And I was like, how am I working with a company like this? Well, there must be a lot of people. If Adidas is having this issue, what other brands are going to have this issue or are having this issue right now? I'm going to focus on these issues that they're having. And that became my business as well. And it was legitimately like, if I'm having these issues, someone else is having these issues. And it's entrepreneurship 101. Anytime you're creating a business to solve a problem, you probably have a pretty good idea. Okay. So, you went and got investors. You started seeing that like these scripts, and the more sophisticated you got, you're like, this is actually the solution, that we're going to try to push. How long ago is that, and where are we at now?
So that was to put this in perspective. It was late 2017, early 2018 that we're playing around with these scripts, and we're trading these cryptocurrencies. But I think like about halfway through 2018, that's when we really figured it out. We went and talked to a bunch of people who were doing the same thing, and then that's when it clicked. So the first thing that we did is we came to the conclusion that we didn't know anything about starting a business. We knew a lot of people that did, but we knew nothing. So we went through an accelerator, and that was honestly a hugely influential experience. So we stopped.
Can I ask what the accelerator was?
It's the MIT Delta V accelerator for companies founded by MIT students.
Okay.
It was New York based. It was awesome. They had us on Roosevelt Island. It was just, this beautiful space that they put us in. And the whole goal of the summer is just, either prove that your idea is good or quit while you're ahead. Don't waste any more time other than your summer, because you have so many valuable things that you could be doing. And we really took that to heart. We stopped writing code. We just went and we talked to, about as many people as we can, people who are in cryptocurrency trading, but people who weren't. We talked to all of the major Wall Street firms, hedge funds, asset managers, banks, brokers, exchanges, et cetera. We just want to know how this world works. And at the end of the summer, we walked away with a really strong idea. After hundreds of interviews, primary market research 101, we walked away with this really grandiose idea of what the future could look like for Bitcoin trading. And we knew where we were, and it was a really far ways away. And that's what we wanted to focus on.
I think one major point here is, you were doing all this, you have a background in research, and you're doing all this research, but you're also taking action at the same time, right? And it was the action that got you to the next level, even though you could have researched all day, right? You could have researched Bitcoin if you had never made moves and never wrote that first script and never moved to the second iteration and onto the third. So you're talking about like all these people you interviewed, and I did it quite a bit differently in regards to, I didn't know of anyone doing what I was doing at that time. I couldn't find them. Like it was just Elance or Upwork, and like that was it. And I also didn't love asking for help. I think there was a difference in university levels probably, and where you're at in the country and like who you're dealing with. It wasn't second nature for me to just like, this person wants to help me, this person wants to help me, or I didn't have those business connections. So it was very like, in some ways it was great because it was, I didn't have anyone telling me do it this way or do it this way or do it this way. But now I'm someone that like pays for coaching now, and like, I completely see that kind of mentorship differently. But I think that was really big, and you didn't even really harp on it, but it was this action for months or years. And then you get to this accelerator that probably brings intentionality around what you need to think about. And then going out there and asking people in the industry what was going on. Can we break that down just a little bit? Like what would a meeting look like with an industry leader that you're like, hey, I talk to you about, starting a firm or a group around helping people trade Bitcoin. Like you have a company too, and I want to pick your brain. Like, how did that go down?
So, it helped, there's so many disadvantages to starting a company while you're young. But here's the one really thing that's good. You can play the student card, and we played it as hard as anyone could possibly play it. So every single person we reached out to, we're like, hey, we're these young students. We're excited about the world. You have such a cool job. You have such a cool company. We'd love if you took a little bit of time, 20 minutes. We'll come to your office. We just love to learn about what you do. And everyone took that meeting. We had like a 98% response rate from, as high as you can go on the executive ladder. It was fantastic.
So you tracked your response rate?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. We reached out to thousands of people, us being researchers, us being quantitative, we wanted to see, okay, if we take this pitch, does it work? If we take this pitch, if it works. And the one that always worked was, just talk to them about real things, like we're students, we acknowledge we don't know the world. Teach us, help us, and maybe we'll do something interesting that you want to be involved in or that you want to watch from the sidelines. Maybe this is, an entertainment for you, but something we were able to get a lot of real value out of it.
Americans with humility. Strange. I don't know. Strange.
It was a different time.
Yeah, I guess so. A couple years ago. No, but for real, I know that they, like, as someone that's grew up overseas and traveled, and this is home, but students abroad have a different kind of mindset, in that regard to being the student, and it's super cool you guys leverage that. I'm a mentor at UMKC. I also got a design thinking master's certificate from Springfield, Missouri State.
Yeah, look at that.
This year, so a little home.
Near and dear.
Same thing. Can I learn about this? And I feel like in doing so, where I was giving back, it's kind of opened up my mind, because I've been doing this several years. It opened up my mind to be able to say, hey, I'm going to ask up. You know, and I actually like really enjoy it. I think you'd be surprised why that open rate was so high is because money's not involved. And so I feel like, and I'm a bootstrapper, so I felt like it was an easier, is I got a little bit I got to be a little bit more creative in my responses and like the advice I was giving, because I knew they didn't have money, they're students. I get to think outside the box versus like the staple answers I need to tell a big brand or someone like
Yeah.
that. It's like a different conversation. I'm not going to talk to a competitor in the same way I'm going to talk to a student, you know?
Yeah.
No, so I just digging into that a little bit, I think it was huge, and it's something that we can all learn, whether you're trying to be an entrepreneur, you're already one, or you're a founder. You know, that market research part. And then another thing, I think we're very much the same in regards to the A/B testing part, right? So I think I'm a data scientist now as far as Amazon goes and understand the algorithm and the keywords, and we could probably chat all day about that data. I think you would really geek out. And if you ever want to build another software, you let me know. But you know, that A/B testing thing is so important. It's not about being perfect. It's about trying 2, 3, 4, 5 different ways. Whether it's an email marketing campaign, whether it's a sales header, whether it's a LinkedIn, you know, DM, you know, whether it's an Instagram DM, it's try, and try again, and track your results. You know,
Yeah.
I think that's a big thing. So you guys knew, even when you're in that infancy stage, that you wanted to be tracking all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it came from the background. You know, like we knew that in order to improve anything, in order to research anything, you have to understand what you're working with. So we tracked everything, and we still track everything religiously. You know, it's like the most common word that we use is metric as a business. You know, because we always want to be able to quantify things down to metrics. So like, you know, we have metrics to understand how fast our engineering is going. You know, the visibility that we have as a brand. You know, of course, you know how our product is working. You know, the performance metrics of it. But it all came from inception. You know, at that point, you know, we knew even then that, you know, there are ways that we can improve things that we're doing. You know, there are ways that we can shave off hours of these processes that we spent our entire summer on, and that's where it started.
I love that. I feel like I've been working on that, maybe not in completely in business, but like for me, that started out in entrepreneurship. It was like I wanted to improve my life. I wanted to improve my quality of life, and I've been making all these little enhancements that save me an hour. At first, it was I wanted to save 2 hours of driving in traffic, right? And it was like, you know, it was, I really did. I hated it. I was like, man, I could have gone to the gym twice a day. You know, that's how I was thinking. Like in this amount of time I've sat in traffic. I didn't start documenting until much later. Did you get that was that from school, or was that from the accelerator that they really kind of hammered that in, or what would you attribute that to?
I think it was, you know, personally myself and my co-founder John. I have two co-founders, John and Van, but specifically John. You know, he and I have been best friends since we grew up together in Springfield, Missouri. He's there too. But this was both something that he and I did during undergrad, and we talked about this all the time. You know, we used to track, you know, we used to track, you know, like the price per calorie that we were spending on our diets to see if we could save money. You know, I used to, and I still religiously track the amount of time that I sleep each night. You know, I track like my weight over time, just because like it's nice to have data, because how can you make decisions? How can you make real world concrete decisions without any sort of data? And you're just like winging it based off your gut, which, you know, some people have done that really well, but like I'm not one of those guys. I'm a researcher. I want to see numbers. I want to see data. I want to be able to crunch it, and I want to be able to use that to make real world decisions I'm really confident in.
Yeah, especially around money, you know, and someone in the Amazon space, I've really relied on data to, you know, guide brands through the process. You know, they have different ways of doing things. Like we're in a whole new world and a whole new arena. A lot of times when I'm working with a brand on Amazon, I need to completely shift their mindset because we're in a different game.
Yeah.
It's a different game. And we don't have to guess if this photo or this photo, you know, translates better to the customer. We can legitimately ask a poll.
Yeah.
We can test it, right? Like, and so because of that, it's been a mixture of how do I get myself in alignment so that my gut decisions are more on point, because at some point you have to make gut decisions, even if it's which one to test first, which could save you time, right? And then the other one is how do I get my data? Like I went to I asked what accelerator you went to, because I recently went to a Goldman Sachs 10K SB in Boston. And I know that you
Nice,
guys
nice.
are
Yeah.
based out of Massachusetts, so I was thinking, maybe they've had a lot of people come through there.
Mhm.
It was really impactful for me, and one of the biggest things I took away was, um, kind of like dashboards. I don't want to say dashboards do it, but it was like I'm amazing at tracking Amazon data. It's not the same inside my business.
Yeah.
Right. In regards to like, how do I take like our social media efforts and our, our web efforts and our Google Analytics and our like our time tracking and like my employees, all that kind of stuff. And how do we really know how everybody's doing? And it's been a journey for me since the beginning of the year to try to like solve for that solution. Okay, let's take it into, kind of what you guys are doing. So how does this like personality trait that, maybe you and your co-founders have had made your marketplace better,
Ooh.
so to speak?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so I think it comes down to the fact that how we communicate with our customers and our partners. It comes back to that central question of how can you track this in a metric that makes sense, that clearly communicates a message. There's no point in having data if it's not used to clearly and concisely communicate something that matters to the end user. And for us, the metric that we measured was how much can we improve like the price of a transaction, right? If you're buying Bitcoin on one place, what if you can buy it somewhere else for like half a percentage cheaper, right? That metric, that metric right there of that price improvement it speaks a world of volumes to the customers that we work with, because we're working with people where if they change their trading strategy and they make like 0.1% more a day or whatever it is, that's the difference between being like a good company and being a unicorn company, like that difference right there. So how we've built this into a way that actually speaks to our markets is it actually just comes back to the data, and making sure that the data is transparent and easily accessible, and making sure that we can speak about said data to our customers in a way that concisely makes sense for their priorities.
No, I love that. And honestly, it's just a challenge that I've had over the last, I've been doing Amazon for 9 years, worked with over 300 brands. I've seen a lot. Okay. And, a big part of that is, brick and mortar companies, coming online, coming to Amazon and selling direct to customers and changing the way that
Yeah.
they've always done things. And another one would be, maybe they are already on Amazon, but they were in the early years where they just sold to Amazon at 50%. Like, let's just say wholesale, agreed upon price. Well, when you're selling directly to customers, you're selling at 100%. Right. So you're getting 100% of the profit. Now you have different fees.
Yeah.
Right. But it's all about the data. In that conversation around, look, I'm like, even if you guys make 55% or 60% margin versus a 50% margin, we've done nothing to grow your business. We've just made you more profitable simply by the way that you're doing it and engaging with that.
Yeah.
And I just like to tie it in because, it's a lot of the same principles. Like if you don't have data, you can't make decisions. You're making a guess.
Yeah. And the world that you live in is all data. Like Amazon, when it comes down to it, you're interacting with what, like hundreds of millions of buyers, maybe more, is probably in the billions now. It's a world of data on how they interact with things, what they click on, what colors they like to see. And when you have access to that many consumers, you can make any decision you want over data. You can make a decision on whether or not you post something at 7 a.m. or 7:01 a.m. based off that data. So I mean, you're completely right. You live in probably a more data-driven world than I do, and that's a crazy thing to say.
Yeah, and it's honestly exciting because at first I didn't know, and it was more of like you need to come up with these creative ideas, like to make this work on this platform, and it was like waiting on the brand to come up with these ideas and different things like that as I started working with smaller brands. And then I realized I learned about photography and the data around photography, and I learned about the data around the ads, and I learned around the data around the keywords and how they could be tracked in sales volume and momentum and all those things, right? And for me, it was like a light bulb went off in my head because it was like, this is repeatable, right? And there's still like it's a mixture of art and science in that regard. But it's not that I come up with a genius idea for every brand that hires us. It's that I know all these data points that if we like analyze the data, we see what's wrong or what's great. And then, we set up a roadmap or a strategy to improve those data points, like one by one. Let's say there's 100 of them and you improve all 100. We're going to have a store that's selling a lot of shit, and it's like, I mean, it's happened over and over and over and over. And so it's like, hey, what didn't work with the last one? Well, we didn't pay attention to this data point, or, that kind of thing. Let's change direction just a little bit. So we've kind of covered the backstory to how you got, Floating Point Group off the ground. Talk to us now about how you help customers like in a day-to-day. So like, I like to break it down super simple. Maybe we went a little high level for some people for a little bit, but like you just met me. I've told you about kind of what I know about digital currency. It's pretty like 101. Let's say someone's trying to get involved. Do they need, 19,000 to get in the game? How do they engage with you? What does that look like?
Yeah. So, I think that's one of the beautiful things about cryptocurrency is that no one's locked out of the market, no matter where you are, who you are, whether or not you have a bank account, whether or not you grew up in the US or in Zimbabwe or Madagascar or Singapore, it doesn't matter. Because all you need to get into it is an internet connection. And that's a beautiful thing. And thanks to, Elon Musk with, SpaceX and what he's working on, anyone anywhere in the world will be able to get an internet connection pretty soon for pretty cheap. So, it changed.
Can we pause right there for 2 seconds? Okay. So you said Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
You said Zimbabwe. I grew up in Congo. Okay. And it was $10 a minute on a phone call. Back then it was 2001. And we put emails on floppy disks. I think that's one of the most remote places probably in the world. There's probably a few others. But you're right. The world is getting internet. I'm excited about that for educational reasons and the level of education that so many more people are going to get. But you talk about all these trades that can happen in seconds and things like that. Does it need to be like, like a really strong connection? Like, I guess I just don't understand exactly how, is it just like buying something on Amazon if you're trying to make a trade, in that way? Is it like, you're set up, you click, you buy, you're good to go?
Yeah, I mean, that's effectively it. There's nothing that actually physically moves. It's just the transfer of data from one place to the other. Like the entire monetary system here is it's code and it's data at the end of the day. And no matter how slow the internet connection is, it's not a lot of data. This whole thing moves pretty quickly, no matter how poor your internet is. So that's the beautiful thing. It's the inclusion. Like it's practically impossible to find a way to be excluded from the world of cryptocurrency if you want access to it.
See, I wouldn't have known that. I'll be honest with you. Like all I really know is a bunch of scammers and spammers that like hit up my DMs asking me if I want to invest in Bitcoin. And
of course.
I look at Bitcoin and it's like 18,000. I'm like, okay, I'm not involved there. I missed it. So that's news to me.
Yeah. I mean, so part. Yeah, no, it's cool because like, sure, like a single Bitcoin is worth what, like $19,000, $18,000 right now. But, you can buy decimal places and not like you need to buy the whole thing. So, if people want to get access to the Bitcoin network, it goes out to like eight decimal places, right? A single 8 decimal places out, each one of those is called a Satoshi. You could just buy one Satoshi if you want to.
Okay.
It's like in the monetary system, in like the US dollars, it's like buying a cent. It's like probably like the smallest unit of the US dollar that you could probably get, in the world of Bitcoin, that's one Satoshi. And that's like, like a tenth of a cent or even less than that at this point. So it's really easy for people to actually, access and use it. But don't get me wrong, the user experience of doing so is hard right now. It's hard for people to really get into it without understanding some of the technology behind it because it kind of sounds scary. You don't know, if this really is something that's legitimate or if it's, those scammers that are in your DMs. They're in mine too. They promise me every single day how well they will manage all of my Bitcoins if I'll just send them to them right now. I've never taken them up on it, but I'm sure they do it really well.
Yeah, I don't know either. I know some of them look really cute. And I'm like, hard to trust, so that's a big thing with me. But like you talk about like everything being code, but like, is there any difference between the banking systems we have now and they're just moving money around through debit cards and credit cards and data? Like, it feels somewhat the same. And one thing I want to pause you on, I think I could use some clarity around the mining part. I think if I have that question, others have that question. Do we want to get to that later?
No, the two questions you just asked are perfectly linked. So we'll talk about both right now. So when I say that the Bitcoin, the Bitcoin network and in all cryptocurrencies, there's just code. Realistically, what it is it's made up of a lot of people who all agree effectively in consensus that something should happen. Like, when you swipe your Bank of America credit card or your debit card, whatever it is, you're waiting on your friends at big old Bank of America to say yes, thumbs up, I think this should happen. What if you didn't need someone else's approval? Right? Like, what if no matter what happened in the world, you would never ever have to worry about Bank of America saying no, right? That's a crazy concept. It doesn't matter in America. That's true. We've benefited from the ideas of financial stability for so long that a lot of these concepts sound crazy. But what about in Hong Kong, right? Where protesters and students and anyone who raised their voice against what was happening there, a lot of them found their bank accounts drained. A lot of them went to pay for food, that way they could go back the next day, they could protest, and they can't buy anything because their debit cards were drained. Suddenly the idea of having complete financial control matters a lot more when things like that are happening. So sure, in the US it probably doesn't matter too much, but around the world it really does. And so this is why it matters. It's this concept that I was talking about consensus, right? This is essentially the same thing as democracy, right? What happens every time you submit a Bitcoin transaction is that everyone else in the world can see it. Everyone else who's, dialed into the Bitcoin network supporting it, they can all see it. And as long as the majority of those people say, yes, this is a good transaction, it will happen, right? There's no one person that controls it. There's no two people, there's no company, there's no organization, no one controls it. You can contribute to it just as easy as I can. You just have to be able to interact with the network. So it's this beautiful concept that, no matter who you are around the world, you have an equal vote to everyone else does, and you get to approve or deny those transactions, which means it's really, really, really hard to shut this down because you'd have to go find every single person in the world who believes in Bitcoin, and you'd have to take away their internet access, and that's never going to happen.
I like that. That's powerful stuff, I think. And as someone that's very passionate about those things, freedom, financial stability, inclusion.
To me.
Yeah. As someone that's been around the world where we don't have all these freedoms, it's not that hard for me to believe or to imagine, those things happening. And when you were talking about, Bank of America, needing to process that transaction, that was exactly what I did at a knock that I was telling you about, that I was like, I hated this. I was like, this is where IT people go to die. Like, I'm leaving. I'm not going to die here. I'm not going to die here. And it was more money than I'd ever made at that time. And it was exactly that. It was watching a network. If the networks get overloaded, essentially you get denied at the register. It would say timed out or whatever. And then, MasterCard, the company behind the credit cards, or, Visa and MasterCard, would stand in for Bank of America or Commerce or whoever you're using as a bank, and would process that transaction for you. And, in my mind, I can 100% see, well, like, what if that breaks? What if that next process breaks? Like, you just don't have money. You just you don't have access to that. You have someone telling you, like, no, you can't get your funds in that way. That's kind of crazy to think about.
Yeah. And, I think that's one of the things that really got me interested in just the philosophy behind it. And of course, so many people who are in the world of Bitcoin, it's like a cult effectively, where all these people are showing their, if you're not in it, you're not one of us, so you should just get out. That's not true. Like, don't get me wrong. I have a bank account. I love having my bank account. I have a credit card. I swipe that thing daily, maybe a little bit less. I'm pretty frugal, but you get the picture, right? Like, I still believe in the financial realm, but I believe in insurance, and I believe in managing my risk. And I'll tell you what, the Bitcoin that I have, this is insurance against the world going crazy, right? It's a really interesting concept that these two things are probably inversely correlated. If the whole world does well and everyone comes together in harmony and unity and prosperity, then Bitcoin probably won't matter that much. But what if it doesn't happen like that, right? That's where Bitcoin comes in, and that's why I really want to make sure that we have this layer of financial stability around the world. It's an insurance policy, effectively, for the world to continue to be able to operate.
That's definitely where my interest in it comes, is, as I'm building my multiple businesses, and my like acceptance for risk is very high right now. Knowing like, you know, where I want to be with those things and what I want to invest in, and, you know, whether it's real estate, whether it's Bitcoin, it's the market. You know, I've started digging in. I've started listening to podcasts. So I was super excited to get you on the show today to just kind of ask some of these basic questions, you know, that I think a lot of people have. Can we talk just a little bit more about the mining? Like, I guess I just don't understand that part. And because it seems like there's money made in trading and there's money made in mining.
Yeah. So, I mean, step one of mining, you know, you have your pick. No, I'm kidding. You know, the process of mining is that consensus, right? You know, every time I do the work to make sure that I can approve someone else's transaction, I enter myself in effectively for a raffle. You know, everyone who contributes to figuring out if these transactions are real or if they're fake, you know, they might win the block reward. You might get paid in Bitcoin for doing that work. Now, the process of mining for Bitcoin, you know, it's based on a concept of doing work, right? And one way that you can quantifiably do work is that you can solve math problems. This is a type of work that computers really understand. You know, you understand that, doing this sort of math problem is very computationally difficult. So if you've solved this problem, you know, it proves that you did the work necessary for verifying this transaction. And the idea here is that you can quantify the voting power that people have, right? So it's not just, you know, one person with one computer, you know, they can have an unlimited amount of votes of effectively, you know, which transactions are good and which transactions are bad. The process of doing these math problems democratizes it, where effectively, you know, it's probably impossible that you're going to have enough CPU on your own to go against all of the other people who are supporting the blockchain network, you know, is supporting the Bitcoin blockchain. So in the process of doing these math problems, you know, it's effectively wasted work. But what it does, it simply proves that you've dedicated the resources to you know, verifying the transaction.
So what does that look like? I guess I'm just imagining like 2 + 2 is 4. Like, you know, like so you're verifying someone's trade. Like, how do you have any right to say, like, you know, whether me and my dad like trade a coin or a part of a coin, what math problem arises for you that you need to solve that says, yes, this is done because you've been validated that you did. Explain this to like a common person. I don't understand.
Yeah. So
you say like, I'm gonna be a miner. I'm gonna be a miner, and I get plugged in. Someone like you plugs me in. You're like, look, I'm gonna show you how to process transactions, and you're not gonna invest any money, but you're gonna do these problems. If you get enough raffles, like, you'll eventually start collecting some coin, and then, you know, you're working for money. So what does that look like? And what do I do at the computer? Like, do I just allocate resources for my computer to do work for me, or am I physically doing it?
So it's your computer doing the work. So what you're doing is you're effectively locking up your computing power to just solve these problems all day, every day. And, you know, the problems themselves don't really matter. It's this crazy cryptographic problem where, you know, you have to guess like the right like 16-digit number, and whoever guesses that number correctly, you know, whoever does that problem and you know, ends up with like the right number, you know, the right string, you know, they're the person who who gets it right. But, you know, the thing that they're verifying here, here's a really interesting concept I don't think we touched on before. You know, because this blockchain network, you know, because anyone can access it, anyone can read the data, there's absolute transparency into who has what money. Now, what I see is, you know, I'm not going to see that, you know, Kevin or Andrew, you know, has, you know, X number of Bitcoins. What I'm going to see is that from address 1 to address 2, you know, someone wants to move money from 1 to 2. Now, do they have enough money in address 1 to actually move it to address 2? Let's say I only have 1 Bitcoin and I want to move 10. I can just tell the network that I'm moving 10 to address 2. And if no one stops me, it'll happen, right? But you have all of these people around the world who just checking. They're like, okay, he wants to send 1 Bitcoin. Does he actually have 1 Bitcoin in that address? If yes, sure, looks legit. If no, that's clearly not legit. That's probably fraud or of some kind, and it gets rejected. And all of these people around the world, all these miners, they just have computers that are running in the background, They're just running a simple program. It's not really doing anything fancy. It's just doing these math problems all day, every day, and just verifying, address one wants to move 1 Bitcoin. Does it have 1 Bitcoin? If yes, send it. If no, don't send it.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. I guess like I really have a grasp now, honestly. Like it's CPU power. It's not someone sitting there doing it, it's someone. And then, if you're the one that guesses a 16-digit code or your computer is the one that guesses it, you get a commission for the sale, so to speak.
Effectively,
and
yeah.
Yeah, and you gain enough of those, then maybe you're able to do something with it. Okay, so you didn't get into that, even though you're all about the data, because that just wasn't like of interest to you, or you didn't understand that wasn't the first thing you learned.
So it's a really interesting thing. That's actually my co-founder Van. That's how we got into the space. So way back in the day, in like 2014, which for me feels like way back in the day. He went around campus and he set up a few miners on university property, and he would just he plugs in these computers. They go to town. He doesn't need anything from the computers. All they do is sit there all day, every day, doing these transactions, and eventually one of them might get it right and might make some Bitcoin. So he did it for a really long time, and he had a lot of fun with that. But that business is very hardware intensive. If you want to be like really competitive, then you want to have like the world's best computers that can do these math problems faster.
Lots of them, yeah.
And then this turns into like a huge data center problem, because like if you really want to do it, and if you want to do it really well, then you're going to want to host all of your own servers. You're going to want to have your own, like,
cheap as possible.
Yeah, exactly. Like the cheapest electricity as possible. You want to have like the best distribution of like cold air through like your huge data center if you're getting really professional about this. And none of us have any sort of expertise in hardware. And it's definitely bad, because the cost to set up hardware is tangible. The cost to set up a code is very, very easy for us. Do we have enough time to write it? Can we write it? Are we smart enough to write it? The answers to those things are probably yes, we can do that. Can us as undergrads set up, a very competitive mining operation? Probably not. We could, we definitely had one running out of the dorm room where, it was able to, generate, a couple Bitcoins once in a blue moon. But we really didn't see that being the path to which, we went, being 22-year-old entrepreneurs to building $1 billion business. We really didn't see that path there.
Yeah, a lot of people ask me like if I have my own e-commerce brands, and I do now, but for years I didn't, and it came out of practicality. Like I legitimately didn't have money to invest $5,000 or $10,000 into product and learn, on that. I was literally just trying to get by, trying to, like get my car to work, and like, so it was like, what can I do for free to make money? Which was my, give my time, not necessarily like my resources. And so for that, it was like, look, I've spent a crap ton of time learning how to solve these problems. Pay me for that. And let me, so that's why like the service-based, the model of Marknology, like, helping people in that space was, more appealing to me. And I want to give one more shout out to our sponsor, gusto.com. I've used them. I honestly wanted to stop writing checks. I've like optimized my life and my business to be able to work from anywhere in the world. And I have a team of 14. And, if I was taking a 2-week trip or a 3-week trip, I was having to like kind of like pre-write these checks and like, leave them for the team so they could get paid while I was gone. And, I'd always just done things the way I'd done it, because finance wasn't my like area of expertise. So moving to Gusto, really helped me streamline that. It allowed me to like make changes to payroll while on the go from an airplane. Didn't matter, be able to offer time off, payroll, tax calculations. Just a huge help to me. And want to give them a shout out, because sometimes we get sponsors on here. I'm not always a user, but with Gusto I am, and it's really helped, just streamline my business, make sure we're not missing things, not having to like make extra trips, to the office, or if someone's sick, and, specifically during this pandemic, like have to hand deliver checks or things like that. If you care about your people, you want to get them paid, so, Gusto is a big help for us. Want to give them another shout out as our sponsor. Back to business. Okay, so we understand why you didn't do mining. We know what mining is now. We understand how you got into it. And, sometimes you have to get into something to know that you want to go a different direction, so doing it out of the dorm rooms, like kind of learning that way, gets you involved, you're taking those actions, and then you learn and you make adjustments, and you're like, okay, the script we can do for free, and I don't need all this kind of stuff, and I don't want a huge server room, and we don't have any expertise there. What do we have expertise in? If people want to get involved, they don't have to have 17,000 or 19,000 or 20,000 to get involved. It's inclusive for anyone. You just need internet connection. Okay, so we've learned a lot, honestly, so far. And at least for me, I've learned a lot. And I want to know, like, now, like, let's talk about the business a little bit. Like, how do you help people and how do they get involved with you?
Yeah, I mean, so we're the back end layer, right? No one's going to go to Stripe and use them themselves. You go to businesses and you're like, oh, I want to pay for your service. How do I do it? And they're like, hey, here's our friends at Stripe. They have this beautiful system. It takes a couple lines of code, and they've made it really easy for us to take your money. We're like the Stripe in this case, right? So we're never going to see any end customers. What we're going to do in the background is we're going to make sure that everything's moving safely and efficiently. And we're going to provide all of the developer tools to make sure that the businesses that you want to patronize are doing it efficiently. So what we have is we have a list of people who've built beautiful products on top of our product. And that's how I recommend to get involved, because I know that they work. I know that they're trustworthy because we've helped build them. So we're really invested in those people's products, because like we know, out of everything in the world of crypto, some of it's kind of sketchy. I agree, but like we know those people and we know them. We've been to, to their offices, to their homes. We know that they've worked with good technology because we built it by hand ourselves. So those people get involved, and if you look up Floating Point Group and in Google News, you'll see some of the partners that we've done press releases with. Those people have awesome products. I would really suggest you use them. They provide some of the world's easiest experiences to get into crypto.
Awesome. And is there, like, you talked about it being inclusive? Is it truly like anybody that's like looking to invest? Is there kind of a minimum to get involved with? All those companies probably have their own stipulations to getting involved or investing with them. And if that's the case, just let me know. I just think as we go into 2021, this is just going to continue to grow. Like, we're both in spaces that aren't going anywhere. They're going to continue to grow. And I guess that's where I was when I got into real estate. I thought, I needed $10, $15, $20,000 to get started, on my first home. That wasn't the case. I think I bought my first 2-bedroom, 1-bath house for I put $3,500 down, and so in my mind it always been like just this large number to get involved. It's not the case.
You're absolutely right. The groups that we work with, have higher numbers on these things. But if you want to talk about inclusivity, if you have $5, $10, you can go on some of these businesses and you can buy, your first, partial Bitcoin. You can go on Coinbase, and Coinbase has, probably the world's easiest experience for this. You can hook up your debit card. You can spend $5, and you don't have to worry about it after that. Your Bitcoin is just there. It'll never go away from you. And suddenly, you have a little bit of exposure. The bigger you get, the more sophisticated it becomes. But at the end of the day, it's as easy as that. There are places around the U.S. and around the world where it's an actual physical ATM that you can find on the street, and you can go and stick in a $5 bill. It'll spit out $5 worth of Bitcoin. And you have to do something with that, but they will either give it to you on an app where you can have you can see a little balance there, or they'll actually spit out on a piece of paper that actually contains the digits for the Bitcoin to actually access that. Because at the end of the day, it's all code and data, right? So sometimes they have to actually give you a piece of paper that contains it. Long story short, the barriers to entry here are as low as they can possibly be.
I love it. You said Coinbase, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so what happens if Coinbase goes down? Where does your Bitcoin go?
That's a really good question. And that's why all of this, we have to give our legal disclaimer. We offer no legal investment, financial, tax advice whatsoever. However, I personally would not store my money on exchanges, because at the end of the day, these people are startups. Now they're much more, they're large, very successful startups by this point. But at the end of the day, it might be difficult if Coinbase goes out of business tomorrow. I actually don't know what to tell you. That's the critical risk that my business faces as well. And we're working with people who have, a lot of money that would potentially be at risk if that happens. So, there are lots of ways to hold your Bitcoin yourself. You can do the really radical ways where you just memorize that number and you just pray to God that you never forget it.
Tattoo it.
Yeah, tattoo it, then, or memorize it, and I've done that, and it's terrifying because if I ever forget that number, then I'll never be able to access this. But it's that concept that no one can ever take that out of my memory, right? That is permanently mine. No one can ever do that. That's fantastic. But there are a lot of ways to do this. If you look up like Bitcoin wallet on Google, right, you'll find tens and hundreds of services that help you hold it for yourself, on your computer or on your phone, etc., where you're not at risk of, someone else's business going under or getting hacked.
Okay, so let's say their business goes under, but you still know the code. Do you only get the code if you pull it out, or while it's still there? How's that work?
So when you're working with businesses like Coinbase, these at the end of the day, it's still a centralized company where they have a headquarters and a CEO, etc. If it's in their possession, you're at you're at the risk of them saying no, just like you are with Bank of America. So if you go and you try to, even if when you bought that Bitcoin, you knew the code that was associated with it. When you send it to someone else, for example, Coinbase, you no longer have the access to the wallet where it was at. You no longer know that code. So the issue is if it's just sitting there, controlled by someone else, you're at risk of a centralized point of failure, just like the problems that I was talking about with the U.S. financial system. So there are a lot of benefits to holding it yourself. It is dangerous. It is hard. What if you lose like your USB drive where you're storing the code for it, right? That happens. There are crazy stories about it. So don't put your life savings into it, please, dear God, right? Don't put your life savings on a USB drive. But if you have $1,000 there or something where it's safe and it's outside the rest of the world, there's your insurance.
Yeah. No, I just these are real practical questions, and maybe not the questions you always get into, but for me,
I love it.
awesome. Like, I just think it brings a lot of education to the space, and I give out so much value and so much content, like for free around Amazon because I'm just so passionate about it, and I want people to really know. No, like, I get it that Jeff is a billionaire, 10 times over, 100 million times over, but we help local businesses. We help small businesses all day, every day. Grow, hire people, get national exposure, insurance for them to not just be in their little store that got closed down by the pandemic, but be online. And there's a lot of things that Amazon has done for businesses that people just have no idea about. They have kind of fear around it, or they lack knowledge. A social media marketing company that doesn't know Amazon is going to talk shit on Amazon because they don't understand it, and they want that business. So, I spend a lot of time just educating people. Amazon can be a beast to manage. It's a pain in the butt, for sellers because the platform is made for buyers. But there's a ton of money to be made, and there's a ton of upside as well. So I totally get that and really appreciate everything you shared on the show today.
Yeah, absolutely. It's exciting to be able to share some of this knowledge, because at the end of the day, if we're the only people, the Bitcoin crazies, if we're the only people who ever use the network, it doesn't achieve what we're trying to achieve. What matters is that we make it easier to use, easier to understand. That way, it can spread across borders. It can be something that doesn't just have to be centralized with a small group of people who with really technical knowledge to understand it. I'm happy to do my part to help people understand, and maybe they'll play around with it and have some fun. Maybe they'll make some money on it. Maybe they won't. And all that's okay. But it's a way to make the world a little bit more inclusive.
No, I love it. All right, as we wrap up, because we're coming on an hour, what's one thing you want to leave with our listeners today, maybe that we didn't cover, whether it's about your company, whether it's about digital currency, whether it's about entrepreneurship, just share something that you feel would provide some value to our listeners.
Yeah, I mean, when I think about people who would be listening to this podcast, the entrepreneurs or the would-be entrepreneurs, I think the best piece of advice I could give is this, right? You're a function of your team, and your success is a function of your team. And I think that the one thing that we've probably done best is that we've hired, world-class people who've helped us build what we've built. And of course, I hope they listen to us. I hope they hear what I'm saying. I tell them all the time. But the fact of the matter is this: we went out and we found people who are builders. We found people that we want to build with. We found people, who, it's okay if they don't have the right resume points. They're smart, they're scrappy, they're willing to work with you at, 10 p.m. on a Sunday night if you have to in order to get the job done. So I think my advice is, to find those builders, whoever they are, whatever they look like, whatever background they come from, if they're college dropouts like me, if they have a PhD from Harvard, it doesn't matter. What matters is that you find those people who, you're willing to go conquer the world with, who are willing to build with you, and you go on that journey together. I think that's the number one thing that will make people successful.
Kevin, that was a great way to wrap up the show. And honestly, someone messaged me earlier today on Instagram and it was saying it was actually a post on a friend's, but we're all friends, and so it was kind of an interaction. And he was saying, the most important thing is to continue to surround yourself with people that are trying to be better and people that want to build. And we talk about you're the sum of the 5 people, but even in a business aspect, you're the sum of you're the sum of your partners, you're the sum of the people that you're working with. Do they want to create something great? Do they want to create something better? Do they want to continue to improve? Or are they okay staying right where they are?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of wisdom in that. Thanks again. As we wrap this up, thanks again to our sponsor, gusto.com. If you're a small business and you're trying to just get one thing off your plate, in the coming year, think about getting your HR, your payroll, just streamlined, make it more efficient. You can have it on auto pay. You can do all kinds of features with this software. You won't be disappointed. The customer service is great. And I have a local CPA here in Kansas City that, even gets in there and helps me set it all up. It's super easy. So I don't even have to do the setup. The account rep along with my CPA got us running in no time. Kevin, thanks again for being on the show. Thanks for all of your knowledge. I'm kind of excited. I feel like I want to go invest in some digital currency. Honestly, I feel a lot more educated, and I really appreciate everything you had to share. Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. Let me know if you get into the industry. I'd be happy to hear how that goes for you. 100%. All right. Thanks, hustlers. We'll talk to you soon.